Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Get out there, play hard, enjoy those games.
Welcome in to Go Big or Go Home. I'm Old Man Troy, joined by the marvelous youngster and future daddy, Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. Getting close, youngster. Getting close for the new addition to the fam.
Yes. We are recording this show on 11/11/21, which is a Thursday. And the due date for my firstborn daughter here is in 6 days. So it sounds like, based on what the doctors are saying, and I believe in what the doctors are saying, that my wife is not, progressing exactly the way she probably should if she's going to have this kid in 6 days. So we're thinking that it might be, she might come later rather than earlier. And so she may be induced to have the child a week past the due date. So at the latest, it should be the 24th, at least, in when she gets induced, whether that means...
You know what, youngster, I hate to have the Mrs. Youngster go through 3 days of labor, but, man, if they induce on the 24th and it takes 3 days to have that kid, it'll be right on my birthday.
I will be sure to tell her that she should wait 3 days. We'll see what she says.
So the loyal listeners know we've been doing this show going on 6 years in January. 6 years.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
And you and I, the years apart, but we have so many parallel things in our life happen. Car issues, your car burns, then my car blows up with a transmit. You know what I'm saying? All these little things that happen to us kind of in a parallel world that are pretty similar, right?
Uh-huh.
So Mrs. Youngster might have to wait a week and then be induced to have your daughter. Well, my grandson, the same thing happened to his mother. The due date came and went, and a week later they had to put her in the hospital and induce her. Took about a day, just to give you a heads up. Took her about a day once she got in, and then everything was fine. So it just, again, it just pops in my head, these similar things that happen in our lives 20 years apart from each other. Just, how similar we are. It's almost like we're brothers.
Right. There we go. We are not blood brothers, but we are Warhawk Purple brothers.
Yeah, Warhawk Purple brothers, and I would say after the many years of doing shows that we're pretty good friends. That helps.
Yeah.
So,
yes, I would agree.
On that note, though, youngster, people don't want to hear about how good of friends we are. They just want to hear us talk about the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And we're doing it on the Interpeak Coffee Studio. They want you to get me all worked up again. So we're on the Interpeak Coffee Studio line, and I know Mrs. Youngster's probably waiting for 2 weeks to have a nice cup of Interpeak coffee, because she's been without coffee for a while.
We were doing some errands today, and she had made the comment multiple times, not just once, that, coffee, when can we buy coffee again? When should we buy coffee again? It's like, yes, the time is coming. it's coming soon. All
righty, let's get to her, youngster. College basketball has started.
Yes.
You can touch on the games that went on in the Big Ten. We'll definitely talk a little bit about college basketball as it started. I call it the foo-foo season, but there were some notable games to start the season. There were some very notable games, but for the most part, it's the foo-foo season. Then we're going to talk about the college football playoff, recap last week's games, look at next week's games, all in an hour, folks. We're going to try to keep these shows to an hour. So take it away, youngster.
Yeah, very quickly, I'll go through the basketball stuff. We are going to record shows regarding solely basketball and season previewing out these teams. But very quickly, on the 9th, again, today's the 11th, on the 9th, the entire college basketball season started. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I didn't even know this, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Big Ten teams start their season on Tuesday, the 9th. On Wednesday, there were 3 more games, and now today on Thursday, there's 1 more. So very quickly on Tuesday, and like you said, a lot of these games are garbage games. It's just the way it is. Some of them are good, and it seems like a decent chance that Michigan State is in those somewhat good games. Part of that is because they're in the Champions Classic every year with Kansas, Kentucky, and Duke. And so this year they played Kansas on Tuesday, and they lost 87-74. Again, we'll get more into Michigan State at a very soon date. But this does not look like one of those Michigan State teams, again, that is looking to go 30-3, win the Big Ten outright, win the Big Ten title game, be a number 1 seed, and be a juggernaut ready to win a title. It just doesn't appear to be that way now. Can they get hot and win 10 straight and win the Big Ten tournament and play their way into being a 2 seed? I'm sure they can, because it's Tom Izzo, it's Michigan State. But on the surface of everything, day 1 of the season, it looks like this is not one of those juggernaut Michigan State teams, just giving the way it looks right now. Purdue, they played Bellarmine. Purdue is I'll say they're my darling Big Ten, love this year. They were, I think, as well a few years ago. Last year it was really Illinois. And Illinois made me look fantastic being on that bandwagon a year ago until they lost in the second round of the tournament, which was very disappointing for me as a bandwagon one-year fan. That's kind of what I do in the Big Ten, is I kind of jump on these teams' bandwagons and really pull for them. Because I think they're being underappreciated. I think they're really good. I think they're, not getting talked about enough. And so I kind of jump on a Big Ten team every year, regardless of the sport. And this year for basketball, I'd say it's Purdue, and this is not me thinking I'm Mr. Einstein here. I think Purdue's literally the highest ranked Big Ten team. I guess I'd have to check Michigan. But Purdue's ranked 7th in the country going into the year, and I think they're deserving of that. I think they were really young a year ago. I think they were a 4 or 5 seed and lost their first game. I think they were a 4. They lost in the first round to a very experienced 13 seed, that happens, and it happened to Purdue a year ago. Now I think basically all their guys are back, and they're poised to be a dominating team. How far they can go, we'll see come March, but for now, it seems like this is going to be a very good Purdue team. And they beat Bellarmine by 29. Moving on, I'll go faster. Illinois is ranked 11th. They played Jackson State. They won by 24. Ohio State is ranked 17th. They played Akron, and they won by 1. So that was obviously a closer than expected game. Maryland was at home to Quinnipiac and won by 14. Maryland's ranked 21st. The rest of these Big Ten teams I'm going to read off for Tuesday are not ranked. Indiana at home against Eastern Michigan, they won by 6. Wisconsin at home against St. Francis Brooklyn, they won by 23. Northwestern at home against Eastern Illinois, they won by 24. Nebraska at home against Western Illinois, they lost by 1. Nebraska a year ago, probably the worst Big Ten team, and based on them losing to Western Illinois, I haven't done my Nebraska basketball homework yet, but it's a decent little indication that Nebraska is probably not fantastic this year either, based on losing to Western Illinois game 1. Minnesota at home against Kansas City, they won by 15, and Iowa at home against Longwood, they won by 33. They scored 106 points. On Wednesday, there were 3 games, so I was wrong. Michigan's the highest ranked Big Ten team. They're at 6. Purdue's at 7. But Michigan was at home to Buffalo. They won by 12. Rutgers at home to Lehigh. Rutgers went into overtime in that game. They won by 3. Penn State at home against Youngstown State. They won by 16. So I don't believe there were any major upsets in there. There are a couple closer than expected games, like probably Rutgers, Lehigh, and was the one team who won by 1 point.
Nebraska.
No, they lost by a point. That was disappointing. Oh, Ohio State against Akron. They won by 1. So, yeah, in general, nothing crazy, but gives you a little quick gist as to where these teams are ranked and maybe what to expect going forward. But like I said, we will get basketball season previews together and out for the internet and you to listen to at your leisure. sooner rather than later. So that's basketball. Unless you got more there, Troy, we can get into these college football playoff ranking.
Yeah, let's go. Let's get into college football. I have nothing else about college basketball right now. Didn't even listen to the Badgers' first game.
Understandable. They played some terrible team.
St. Francis, was it something? I don't even know what team it was, but it was St. Francis.
Yeah, I think so.
Brooklyners.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
so.
I had no interest, even though the team this year is intriguing to me because it's so young, and I want to get to know these guys. But what am I really learning from that game? Not a whole lot.
And me as a Duke fan, I was very intrigued to see them play Kentucky, and I was glad I watched that game. But again, playing Kentucky is different than St. Francis, Brooklyn. College football playoff, week 2. The rankings came out a couple of days ago, and we're not going to spend 15 minutes on this, despite us being able to spend a full hour on it if we really wanted to. Georgia's 1, Alabama's 2, Oregon's 3, Ohio State is 4. Cincinnati is 5, still on the outside looking in. They, again, did not dominate an opponent they theoretically should. If you are that dominant of a team, that's kind of been their problem, is they've won every game, and they've beaten good teams like Notre Dame. But teams like Tulsa, where they should win by 30, they're beating by 7, which is not helping their case long term. Michigan is 6. Michigan State is 7. That is a point that we can certainly touch on because 2 weeks ago, Michigan State at home beat Michigan. They didn't dominate Michigan. They won close. So Michigan State beat Michigan 2 weeks ago. And now a week later, after Michigan State lost to Purdue, who, by the way, is not terrible. Purdue is ranked 19th for a reason. They were not ranked before, but they are ranked 19th now. And mind you, they beat Iowa a few weeks ago as well. So Purdue is obviously capable of beating good teams. Michigan State has now dropped below Michigan, again, despite beating Michigan 2 weeks ago. So, again, you can I'm summing this up very quickly, but does it make sense? No, because these two teams played 2 weeks ago. They're both 8-1. They're both really good. It's not as though this was some upset 3-5 team beating an 8-1 team, and so it's like, yeah, you beat them, but obviously the 8-1 team's still a better team than you, despite you pulling one upset. It's not that. It's 2 8-1 good teams, and Michigan State just beat Michigan. So why are they behind them a week later? It doesn't really make sense. Obviously, the point can be made that Michigan State was at home, and it was a very close game to Michigan, and so the two teams are kind of neck and neck. And if you're a voter and you see Michigan State lose to an unranked team and you see Michigan do what they do and win a game, then maybe you think Michigan's the better team. That's obviously what the thought process was, but again, like I just laid out, Michigan State just beat Michigan. These two teams are 8-1. How do you have Michigan State below Michigan? Your thoughts quickly, Troy?
Well, no, that's the head scratcher, and I understand I'm not a voter. I'm not on this committee, but and I guess in all reality, like, the more I think about it, does it really matter? Like, you could flip-flop them. It's not like they put Michigan State at 11 and Michigan at 5. They're one spot.
Troy, it's also not the college football playoff weekend where, okay, here we go, Final Four teams, let's go, and Michigan's in and Michigan State's out. This is not some dire, ranking. We still have a few weeks to go. Michigan State can still jump Michigan. So I guess that's why I'm not so up in arms about it like some other people are.
Yeah, it would be different, like I said, if Michigan State would have dropped out of the top 10.
Right, sure.
That would have probably been a little more get me going type thing on the show, but I guess I look at it and some people think Michigan is a better program than Michigan State, or more talented, and if you play these two teams again, who would win? Like you said, Michigan State was at home. They just lost to Purdue. Michigan's only loss is to Michigan State. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get up in arms about it and be like, oh, my gosh, how could you do this?
Right.
I can understand why some people are thinking, okay, well, they're close. They're both probably the same type team. But Michigan lost to Michigan State, and Michigan State lost to a Purdue team that's not going to sniff the college football playoff. Whereas Michigan lost a close one to a legitimate team that's in the top 10. So
right.
I can live with that answer. So
there's something to be said in life, Troy, for understanding something and disagreeing with it and not, blowing your head off about it. Like this kind of situation. Like, do I disagree? Do I think Michigan State should be ahead of Michigan? Yeah, I do. But like I just said, what is the huge implication of this? Nothing. So it's okay. Like it's fine. If Michigan State's truly better, they'll play themselves and beat Ohio State and prove, yeah, we're better than Michigan, and they'll jump them. So anyway, moving on from that, Oklahoma is 8, Notre Dame is 9. Again, Notre Dame's only loss is to Cincinnati, who's 5th. Number 10, Oklahoma State. Going down the list as far as Big Ten teams are concerned, so you have those top 10 teams, and I stopped there for a second because those top 10 teams all have one loss or are undefeated. The next teams, if you do have one loss or you're undefeated, you're ranked down here realistically for a reason. But those top 10 teams.
I lost you. For
do you hear me now? Oh.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm here. Those top 10 teams are ranked in the top 10 and are undefeated or have one loss for a reason. And those top 10 teams, there's a way for non-top 10 teams at this point to make the playoff, but it's very difficult. Again, like if Wisconsin at 18 wins out and beats an undefeated Ohio State team, they'll have an argument, that their 3 losses came early and they've gone on this 8-game winning streak and they just proved they're better than Ohio State. Like there's an argument to be made if that happens, but
not really.
A lot of things.
And I'm a Badger fan, youngster. If this was the year the Badgers can sneak in the Big Ten title game and actually compete and beat Ohio State, this might be the year. Because as good as Ohio State is, it's not, to me, it is a little bit below the elite level they've been at, if that makes any sense to you. Like,
I agree.
This is a team where I'm not saying the Badgers can compete with them, because they usually can't. But if there's ever a year that they could sneak in there, this is probably one of the lesser talented Ohio State teams that usually dominates the Big Ten. So I think if I realize that as a common folk sports guy, that the voters probably would recognize that too and say, yeah, well, Ohio State, your season's done. You're not in the playoff. But you know what, Badgers? You lost 3. So, you're not getting in. We're sorry. I mean, that's just the way that I'm thinking about it. And I think I told you this on the other show we do. I'm not even disappointed right now, even if they do that. My expectation is that they play in the Big Ten title game every year. And they hold the cards in their hand right now. So it's up to themselves to get to where I expect them to get. Every once in a while, they'll catch lightning in a bottle and have a chance to be in the top 10, then lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten title game like they always do. That's where my heart comes from. But as a Badger fan, I just want them in that title game every year. That is my expectation. All right, carry on.
As it should be. So like I said, Wisconsin's 18, Purdue is 19, Iowa is 20, and so you go back to the head-to-head matchup thing, not really mattering for Michigan State. Apparently it does for Purdue, Iowa, because Purdue's 19 and Iowa's 20. That's, again, another reason why some people are a little ticked off. Also, last thing I want to note, Auburn is 6-3. They're ranked 17th. Purdue also has 3 losses, Penn State also has 3 losses, and earlier this year, Penn State beat Auburn. So for Penn State to not even be ranked and have the same record as Auburn, who's ranked 17th, a little bit of a head-scratcher there. So, that is college football playoff rankings going into Week 11 already. The weekend of, what will it be, 11-13, November 13th is when these games will be played. Up ahead. But so the actual selection day, just so it's announced, I believe is December 5th on a Sunday. I believe that is the final college football playoff ranking. So, again, we're a little under a month now until it all shapes up. But unless you got more, Troy, we can get on to recapping games.
Yeah, let's recap. Let's recap because that means we're one step closer to my favorite part of the show.
This is true. Locks of the week. We did not have any a week ago. However, there were two things that we did like. We just disagreed on locking them. We are currently 5-10 on our collective locks for the year. Just heads up. So be wary if you're putting real money and you're listening to us that the last couple of years we have not been fantastic against the spread as far as our locks are concerned. But anyway, Troy, a week ago you liked Rutgers plus 12. I have not looked at it yet. At home against Wisconsin. And Wisconsin won the game 52-3. So you did not.
I was wrong on that, and holy good Lord.
Uh-huh.
After about the second quarter, I'm like, yeah, I look like a foolish old man on that show this week. But
by the way,
hey, good for my Badgers, and man, I mean, it's just one of those things. Sometimes you just don't have it. I still think Rutgers is pointed in the right direction, but holy cow.
Yeah. Sometimes we look smart in what we say and talk about, and other times we look like idiots. And that goes for us. That goes
youngster, the 52 points is probably equal to what they scored all year. Who would have thought they're putting a 50 banger up on a Rutgers team?
Right. And that's why partially I enjoy not putting real money on games anymore. I used to a long time ago, but I see some of these backdoor covers and I see some of these games where, yeah, it makes sense for Wisconsin's offense to struggle on the road against an improving Rutgers team, and you think Rutgers can keep it within 12 points. I get it. I fully understand that. And then Wisconsin wins by 49. It's like, what in the world? Huh? It makes no sense, and sometimes those games happen. So, also, Troy was not the only idiot. A week ago, I liked Iowa minus 12 to beat Northwestern. I thought they were going to cruise and dominate, and they won 17-12. They barely won that game by not even a touchdown. So I also was wrong in my thinking. So there you go. Luckily for us and our Monopoly money, we did not lock any of those games. As far as recapping these, Ohio State and Nebraska, Ohio State did win the game 26-17. Nebraska is 3-7 this year. That record does not look fantastic. However, you look at their 7 losses, and they have not lost a single game by 10 points or more this year. This was actually the first game they lost by more than one touchdown this year. And this Nebraska team has played, I think, Michigan, Michigan State, Iowa, Ohio State, Oklahoma. These are all good teams, and they're keeping it close. And so, again, you look at the record, you're 3-7, and it looks like absolute trash. But at the end of the day, if you're a Nebraska fan and you're watching all 60 minutes of these games, I think you understand that the defense is miles ahead of where it was a few years ago, whether that's Scott Frost doing or not, because publicly it seems like he doesn't care as much about the defense as the offense, but it's the defense this year, and we talked about it going into the season as a season preview, that this Nebraska defense is what's going to keep this Nebraska team alive for whatever hopes they have. Probably not the offense, which is very odd. But that was what we said early this year before it even started, and that is proving to be the case because they are never getting blown out by teams, even when it's Ohio State. And even when their number 3 receiver gets 15 catches for 240 yards, you're still keeping the game very interesting in the fourth quarter. So, Nebraska lost another close one.
That's the thing, though, youngster. I wanted to touch on this because you and I are seeing that, okay, we pretty much said that Frost, this was the year that it's going to be a make it or break it year, and they're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not to retain this guy. The expectations were so high. Was it the year he got hired or the second year they had the fans thought they were going to the national playoff? It's like, where is this coming from, fans? Because your team is not even close to being that good. But my point is, are people just going to look at the record this year that Scott Frost has had, or are they going to actually look at how this team has competed in the Big Ten? because they didn't get blown out by a Wisconsin team. You know, last week by however 40-some points.
Right.
My point is, yeah, they're not winning the games, but they're certainly a whole hell of a lot better than they were last year. Like last year, you and I were joking about, here's a win. You're going to Nebraska. Good luck.
Yeah.
And this year, you know, like you said, they're hanging in games. They're there in the fourth quarter. You want to call it football bad luck? Maybe. Sometimes that happens. But I think this team is improved tremendously from last year. However, I don't know if it's going to be enough to save his job. I really don't. I think they're going to look at the wins and the losses. I don't think they're going to look at the competitive nature of the program. That's just me, though.
I think only because it's Scott Frost and who Scott Frost is to Nebraska football, I think they keep him. That's my gut thought.
Well, they haven't been embarrassed. That's the thing. They have not been embarrassed out on the football field on Saturday. The wins aren't there, but the quality of play has been much better.
Sure. Yeah. So,
all right, carry on.
They've got that going for them. And like I said, point I wanted to mention, which I already did, but Ohio State's number 3 receiver, 15 catches, 240 yards. That's, like I said before the year started, you could make a little documentary, I'm sure, 10, 15 years from now about how ridiculously loaded this Ohio State wide receiver room is. Because they had a transfer. They had a guy transfer out this past offseason, Troy, who is now doing fantastic things at Alabama, and he was like the number 3 or 4 guy at Ohio State. That's what he would have been coming into this year. Instead, he transferred to Alabama, and now he looks fantastic. Like, yeah, he's good, but when you're competing with 5, 6 other future NFL receivers, I mean, it's ridiculous what Ohio State has at wide receiver.
They're loaded pretty well there.
Yes. Moving on. Purdue at home against Michigan State. Again, Purdue can throw the ball. They can score. They are capable of beating teams like Michigan State who have a problem throwing the ball and scoring 30 points, like we saw earlier this year with Iowa. Purdue at home against number 3 Michigan State. They win the game, 40-29. If you put up a lot of points against a team that struggles to put up points, there's your recipe for beating a really good team. You know, if you're able to score 70 against Virginia basketball, you're probably going to win. It's very hard to do it, but you're probably going to win. If you score 40 against Michigan State, you're probably going to win the game. That's just the way it goes. Aidan O'Connell, Purdue's quarterback, 40 of 54, 536 yards, 3 touchdowns. We mentioned David Bell and what he might do in this game and how it would be interesting to see. 11 catches, 217 yards, and a touchdown. Again, he's fantastic. And it also goes to show that Wisconsin's defense is pretty good for holding David Bell to like 5 catches for like 30 yards the other week. Because Michigan State has a really good defense. Iowa has a really good defense. And David Bell goes off for 200 yards apiece against both of them so far this year. So quite impressive what Wisconsin's defense was able to do a couple weeks ago. But, yeah, down goes Michigan State again when they're ranked highly. And, again, Purdue is that team that in the Big Ten, because of their style of play, it seems like they can pull these upsets almost more regularly than any other team that's not a consistent top 15, 20 program.
Yeah, they do. I mean, again, you look at this Purdue program, and it's like people say Purdue football, they're thinking bottom dweller in the Big Ten. Well, if that's how you want to think about Purdue when you prepare to play them, you better think twice. And I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm really not. But Purdue can go out, and if that offense is clicking and they're doing what they want to do, look what they did to that Iowa defense. Like, I think this is me personally, and I'm a Badger fan through and through, youngster. I think the Iowa defense is actually better than the Badger defense. Now, I think they're like right neck and neck, like Michigan, Michigan State, the college football poll. But I think Iowa, I just think that defense is better than the Badger defense. They're both great. They are both great defenses. I give the edge to the Iowa. That's why I was afraid when we previewed that Purdue-Wisconsin game. I knew they had a good defense, and I thought, well, offensively, they can't do what Iowa did or they'll get in trouble. And that was the problem with Iowa. Their offense was so horrid that they just kept giving the ball back to Purdue, giving it back to Purdue. But what did Wisconsin do? They controlled the clock. They moved the stick. They didn't let that high-powered offense on the field. Kind of like in the NFL when you're playing against an Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady, guys of that nature, the best defense against those guys, keep them on the sideline. Make sure your offense can have long, sustained drives and keep that high, potent offense on the sideline. They can't hurt you then. Make them have to be perfect every time they get a possession. And, you know, when the other team doesn't do that, Purdue, and they're going to give Purdue 10 possessions, 12 possessions, that offense is too good to be held down for a whole game. It's really good. So that's how Purdue can beat teams when the other team's offense is not helping out their defense. They're going to hang around, and eventually in college, we talked about this many times. Most college programs are able to put up 21, 24 points that are competent against an average defense. I mean, that's what you want your team to do. Even closer to 30, like 28. That's just the reality of college football, and that's why Purdue hangs in these games. You just keep giving that offense a chance, and they've got weapons. You can't hold them down for 60 minutes. And the more chances you give them, the more chances you have of losing the game. That's all I want to say about Purdue. They're a feisty little team. That's what I'll say about them.
And this year they are, I don't know if you can call it quiet, but they are 6-3 overall and 4-2 in the Big Ten.
They're hanging right in there. Hanging right in there near the top.
Yes, they are. So, Michigan at home against Indiana. Michigan controlled the game. They won it 29-7. There's really not a ton to get into here. Their running back, Hassan Haskins, had 27 carries. Cade McNamara, the quarterback, threw the ball 18 times. So there you go. That's how the game was won. They controlled it. Pretty straightforward. The one thing I do want to mention is Indiana is now 0-6 in the Big Ten this year. And their schedule has been quite absurd. But, you know, if you're truly a good program, you don't go 2-7 and 0-6. But they have also been without their starting quarterback for the last month or so, which is not helping them in these games either. But that is Indiana football this year. Anything on that one?
There you go. No, I keep kind of losing you. It's probably because I'm not recording via coming home from work like I normally do. I'm recording via vacation, but still in a vehicle. And I'm wondering if there's not an issue with the Bluetooth today. Maybe because storms are rolling in and it's a bit cloudy here. Just you cut in and out every once in a while. I'll have to see when I edit what's going on. But nothing else there. Carry on.
Illinois goes to Minnesota, and Minnesota was ranked 20th, and Minnesota was, clearly on a roll and ready to get a chance to beat Wisconsin and make the Big Ten title game, and they still could do that. But Illinois went to Minnesota and won the game 14-6. I'm genuinely disappointed in not Minnesota, but Tanner Morgan, Minnesota's quarterback, because a couple of years ago he looked good. And I think we've found out week after week after week that it was the receivers making him look good. They had a couple NFL guys a couple of years ago, and now that he has none, it looks like anyway, he's been very mediocre at best. And Illinois, their running back Chase Brown, 32 carries, 147 yards in this game. They were shut out in the second half, and they still won on the road against Minnesota.
Man, youngster, I'm the old guy. birthday in a couple of weeks, 51 years old.
Brett Bielema has his plan. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's good old-fashioned football. 32 carries. I don't know what the team totals were. Probably, 40-some carries? I mean, I've watched this way of football since Barry Alvarez took over the Badgers. And you can make it work as long as you commit to it. And I think that's what Bielema's trying to do at Illinois, is we're gonna pound it out. We're going to dominate you up front. We're going to make you stop the run. And if you can't stop the run, we're just going to keep pounding it down your throat. We'll run it 50 times a game until you can stop us. It doesn't look pretty. You're not going to put up 45, 50 points every week, but you're going to beat good teams because you control the clock. You move the chain. You go on 10-play, 80-yard drives, take 7-8 minutes off the clock, get a 3-and-out from the other team. You might not score the next time, but you have, an 8-play, 40-yard drive. You punt, pin the ball inside their 20, take another 4 minutes off the clock. Next thing you know, it's 14-7, game over. Nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to commit to. I think that's what Bielema is trying to do at Illinois. He's trying to copy the old Wisconsin way of doing things, and Bielema was there for a while, and he did the same thing there. So if he can do it, Illinois fans, just get used to scoring 20, but your defense allowing 14, because that's the way he wants to play. I have no problem with that. I know in today's world, youngster, a lot of people do. Not I. I like grinded-out football. I like good defensive football. Yeah, every once in a while, I like to watch the high-powered stuff. But it is what it is. That's all I got. Just want to throw that there. Carry on.
Yeah. I mean, you play to what you know best. You recruit to that way.
Or as Herm Edwards says, you play to win the game.
Right. It doesn't matter how you do it. If you run it 50 times or throw it 50 times, Purdue and Illinois have very different styles. You can win both ways. And that's what's great about sports, is there's not one overly dominating way that you have to go by to win. You can be the Titans and clearly feature the ground game, or you can be a Kansas City Chiefs team that wants to throw the ball 45 times. You can win a Super Bowl like that. You have to have some semblance of a running game. You have to have some semblance of a passing game. Your defense can't be atrocious, but you can win with the best defense in the league and play into that. And you can win with having the 15th best defense in the league. But there's variance, and that's what makes sports interesting. So, moving on. Also, I wanted to mention I do think that you can only do so much in year one taking over a program, and I think we've seen a few weeks here, like Penn State and Minnesota, where Illinois' defense just makes you say, well, why did Penn State score 8 points, 9 points, 10 points against Illinois? Like, is Illinois' defense that good? I think Brett Bielema's getting his guys to start playing the way he wants them to. And so, yeah, it's possible for Illinois to hold Penn State to 10. It's possible for Illinois to hold Minnesota to 6. You're not going to see it week in, week out. You're not going to see Illinois hold Ohio State to 8. But you're seeing a little changing of the guard with Illinois, and I think it's cool to see. So, moving on, Wisconsin went to Rutgers and won 52-3, like I mentioned before. Wisconsin did lose, I don't know if it was today or yesterday. Christ announced that Chaz Melisi was out for the year with an injury. I don't think it's been disclosed as to exactly what that injury is, but the point is that he is out for the year with an injury, and so Braylon Allen, this is really his time to shine. In this game, 15 carries, 129 yards, and a touchdown.
The kid's still a teenager.
Yeah. Graham Mertz threw for 3 touchdowns in this game, which I think is probably the most he's had in a game this year. He beat that a year ago, but that was a long time ago. But, yeah, he had 3 touchdowns in this game, 240 yards on 16 pass attempts. So this is exactly what your if Wisconsin's going to be ranked in the top 10 and Wisconsin's going to go 12-1 and Wisconsin's going to upset Ohio State and Wisconsin's going to go to a college football playoff, these are the types of scores, these are the quick little box score snippets you expect to see. You get Graham Mertz, okay, what's he going to do? There's still Wisconsin. He's going to throw it 16 times, but he's going to get 240 yards and 3 touchdowns out of it. Your running back's going to carry the ball 15 times, and that's a low number, but he's still going to get 129 yards, and you're still going to win 52-3 because your defense dominates. That's what you as a Wisconsin fan have to look forward to in getting Graham Mertz and understanding that you can score 50. You can get the most out of your quarterback while also still playing Wisconsin football and just killing teams on the ground and playing elite defense. This is what this game right here is exactly what should make Wisconsin fans excited. The problem is the last 15 games of Graham Mertz, you've seen very mediocre play. And so it's like, what the hell is going on here?
Well, I think the beginning of this year, youngster, that offensive line, I don't know what the problem was. It wasn't as dominating as it usually is. And
right.
that was the issue. The defense has been spectacular all year. Mm-hmm. But offensively, everybody wants to point the finger at Graham Mertz. I kind of did a little bit too. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting protection and you can't run the football, well, then right. You can't win 52-3. And you go back and you look at it, Mertz has good wide receivers, but when you're talking a top 10, top 20 wide receiver pick in the NFL draft, those guys learn how to get open. Badger receivers, they could play on Sunday at the next level, but right now, they're not that amazing. They're not an Ohio State receiver that can get separation 5 yards off the line. And that's the problem.
Yeah, there's a difference between being a first-round receiver at Ohio State and being capable of, 15 catches, 200 yards. There's a difference between David Bell at Purdue and what Wisconsin has. You can see multiple Wisconsin pass catchers be in the NFL, be drafted rounds 4 through 7, but there's a difference. There's a difference in Aaron Rodgers being a top 5 guy compared to the number 15 best quarterback in the league. There's a difference there. You can still be good as the 15th best quarterback in the NFL, but you're not Rodgers, you're not Breeze, you're not these guys that are elite. You can still be good, but exactly what you're saying, you can't necessarily count on Mertz to elevate good receivers against really good defenses sometimes that they play if you're not getting much protection and you're not having a running game. So I agree with you 100%, and maybe that's been it for Mertz not being able to completely show off. If he's at Ohio State, maybe he does.
Yeah, and that's the thing, youngster. I don't want to say, well, this is exactly why, but my thought is the hype that Mertz brought to Wisconsin is, we got an NFL type quarterback in our program now. We got a real quarterback. Well, maybe we should try to chuck it around the field. And that's not the way. We don't need that. I mean, who the heck was this Allen kid anyway? And I'm saying that just because I knew who he was, because he's from Wisconsin. But the kid's 17 years old, youngster. There's no way this kid should be doing what he's doing. But if you look at what the offensive line has provided him when the opportunity is there, he's even said it when I've listened to this kid talk. He's like, my offensive line does a great job. Now, he's still learning the game. He didn't even come to Wisconsin as a running back. He wasn't even recruited to play running back. This kid is going to be good. I hope they run his legs off. All right, carry on.
Iowa at Northwestern. We'll go through these next two fairly quickly. These last two, I should say. Iowa, again, they won 17-12. There's not much to report on Nebraska-wise, in my opinion. And Iowa, they did what they needed to do to win. Their running game, Goodson on the ground, 21 carries, 140 yards, and a touchdown. That's how they're going to win. So, anything more on that?
Nah.
Penn State, last game to recap from last week. Penn State went to Maryland and won the game 31-14. At halftime, Penn State led 7-6. but in the second half they were able to score 24 points. Jahan Dotson, who is another future NFL receiver, we don't mention him much, but he's a future NFL receiver as well, and he certainly showed his skill set in this game. 11 catches, 242 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's been really good at Purdue or Penn State for a few years now. He usually doesn't put up those huge numbers because I think Penn State is run first. And so he's not going to have as many Rondale Moore type games at Purdue. He's not going to have as many David Bell type games at Purdue. He's not going to have Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba Ohio State type games where he can get 15 catches for 200 yards. It's just not going to happen as much. And the same goes for a Wisconsin receiver. You can be a first round talent. You can be the number 2 receiver on the Tennessee Titans offense, and your upside is limited based on what the offense wants to do. You can be Julio Jones. You're still going to get 6 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown as arguably your best or second best game of the year because the Titans want to run the ball 35 times a game. That's just the way it goes. And the same thing for Dotson, in my opinion, at Penn State. There's just not as many opportunities for him to go off for 11 for 240 and 3 scores. In this game, clearly the opportunity was there, and he did it.
But that kid is dynamic, though, when the ball gets in his hands. You can clearly tell he's going to play at the next level. I mean, the guy is a very good receiver. And in the college game, he gets that ball, and if he's in an open space, he's going to take it to the house. You better tackle him. When he catches it, you better tackle him because he'll be gone. Yeah. I mean, the guy's good. Carry on.
Yeah. Taulia, Tagovailoa, 41 of 57 in this game. I think Maryland tried to throw the football. And
just a little bit.
They ended up, they only scored 14 points off of it. So the numbers look perfectly fine for Taulia, but the end result was 14 points. So not good enough for Maryland on Saturday. Anything more, Troy? Otherwise, we can look ahead.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. I love this part of the show. On the Interpeak Coffee studio line, I have to mention. Check them out, interpeakcoffee.com. They also have great gear, camping gear, stuff for the outdoors, sweatshirts, hats, mugs, all kinds of stuff. Again, check them out, interpeakcoffee.com. Thanks again to Interpeak for sponsoring all of our shows. Take it away, youngster.
There's something kind of funny that I want to mention when I talk about Indiana against Rutgers, because I'm just looking ahead at some of these games. I work during the Saturday slate, which sucks, but some of these games will certainly be interesting. There is also no night game, which is interesting. Of the 6 games here, the latest start is it 3:30 or 4? Yeah, 4 p.m. Eastern. So no night game for the Big Ten this week. At noon, Penn State at home against number 6 Michigan. Troy.
That's gonna be a good one. Yeah. That's gonna be a good one. This is where people are gonna decide if Jim Harbaugh should remain. I mean, I know he's still got the Ohio State game, right? But if he loses this one, they drop probably out of playoff contention, and then Ohio State still lose, right? And Penn State's not a bad little football team. I know they took down Wisconsin in week 1, and Wisconsin actually dominated most of that game until late in the game when Mr. Dotson did his thing and helped Penn State come back. But at Penn State, we're going to see how much Vegas actually loves Mr. Harbaugh and his Wolverines. But I'm going to say this is going to be a pick'em game, and I'm going to say it's Penn State by 2.5.
Ooh. You're correct in the sense that it's basically a pick'em game, but wrong on which side it was. Michigan minus 1.5. So at the end of the day, you're not going to bet Michigan because you think they're going to cover 1.5. You're betting Michigan because you think they're going to win. And you're betting Penn State because you don't think Penn State's got a chance of losing by 1, you think they're going to win the game. This is it's truly a coin flip unless somehow it does end 28-27, 31-30. It's pick your winner. Here you go. Go bet it. And for me, Troy, there's a reason why this is basically a pick'em game. I'm not going to lock either way. I don't even know who I like yet. I'm trying to form my opinion. I think that Michigan runs the ball better than Penn State. I think that Sean Clifford can be up and down, and part of it is injury. So I think I like Michigan, but knowing Jim Harbaugh, and it's at Penn State, and it's a big game, and Penn State's looking to take down a top 10 team in Michigan, and I think if I had to, oh man, I think I like Michigan. My gut tells me Michigan, but it's literally like 51-49. There's no way in the world I would bet this game.
Nope, I'm with you. I think they're both. I can make an argument why both teams are going to win. But if you're going to put me on the spot on Go Big or Go Home on the Interpeak Coffee studio line, I'm taking Penn State. And the reason is it's at Penn State, and right. I would love to be a fly in the practice facility this week at Michigan to see if there's any nerves with Jim Harbaugh and maybe too much on edge that we have to win this game. I think he knows that he has to win this game. I think his players know they have to win the game. And I'd like to see if any of that's going to carry over into the game early. And if Penn State gets up early on Michigan's good enough to come back. But, man, I don't know. I like Penn State at home just because they're at home. If the game was at Michigan, I'd say Michigan.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue with you. Also at noon, Wisconsin, number 18, Wisconsin at home to Northwestern on ESPN2, Troy.
Wisconsin by 9.5.
As per always, you're too low. Wisconsin by 24.5 at home against Northwestern.
I'll take Northwestern in the points. I seriously will take Northwestern in the points. Yeah, there's no way. There's no way in the world they beat Northwestern by 24. I'm actually going to find a way to bet this with real money. I have no idea. I have no idea what they're thinking, Wisconsin. They do it one time, and now they're this offensive juggernaut.
Well, right.
I've watched them all year.
But I think part of it is Northwestern's bad. That's the other part of it. Northwestern is bad this year.
Well, yeah, they're horrid.
So, again, I think it's possible that Wisconsin wins 52-3. I think that's possible.
I don't. I really don't. I mean, that is just such a big number, man. It is,
and I want to say this too. 24.5 is actually fairly significant because you can't win by 24, and that sounds fantastic. But at the end of the day, Wisconsin has to win by 4 touchdowns, which again is a lot. You have to really dominate a team to win by more than 4 touchdowns. 24, 31-7, Wisconsin doesn't cover. There are plenty of ways, 38-14, these are common scores to get to. To win by truly 4 touchdowns, you have to really dominate the game and not allow a backdoor cover at the end. So 24.5 it's a lot. Wisconsin can do it, in my opinion. They just showed they can do it against a Rutgers team. They can win by 49. So that's why I say it's possible. But, yes, 24.5 it's a lot for a team that has struggled offensively.
Yeah, carry on. I think Wisconsin wins the game. I'd love for them to win by 28. I really would. And they could. I know Northwestern's bad, but again, being a fan of the Badgers, what if Graham Mertz has a bad game?
Right.
What if they're down a running back, right? So
right.
you're now Allen is the workhorse, which he gets his carries anyway, but who's the complement to him? I mean, they're going to put in a guy that doesn't have as much, what's the word I'm looking for, as much experience that Malusi had. I mean, that was a really good 1-2 punch they had going. Really good 1-2 punch. You lost the 1-2 punch. Could I see the Badgers winning by 17, by 20? Yeah, I could. 24 is a lot. That is a lot of points for the Badgers. You saw where I put the line at 9.5. And I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll go to 13.5. Because I could see them winning by double digits.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just beat this into the ground. So carry on. Let's get to the next.
Indiana also at noon at home against Rutgers, Troy.
Whew, got to DVR this one, don't we?
Oh, the one thing I wanted to mention with this game, too, yes, we do have to DVR it, is so I do this. I look at ESPN's schedule. I go to ESPN.com and pull up the schedule. That's how I read these off and find the lines and whatnot. They also have a little players to watch box where the leading passer going into the game, the leading rusher, the leading receiver for both teams, and it shows the stat. Going into this game, this is why I wanted to bring it up, the leading passer going into this game is Michael Penix, who's Indiana's quarterback, who, again, has been out for at least a month. So I think it's funny that he is the leading passer going into this game, both teams statistically. Indiana's backup quarterback, who's played for like a month, hasn't surpassed him yet, and Rutgers' quarterback, who's played all year, has not surpassed him yet in terms of passing total. So I just thought it was funny. Anyway, Indiana at home.
I think, this is a game when we went over the preview that, hey, this is the game that Indiana has to show, hey, we're going to be in that upper half of the conference in the division, so these are the games we have to win. Well, they're kind of struggling this year, so I don't want to say it's a must-win, but Rutgers, this was a game we also talked about. Like, for these two programs, we want to show you where we're at and how many strides we're making. I just think right now Rutgers is making more, and I know they just got blown up by Wisconsin, so they'll probably go. But I'm going to say Rutgers by 4.5.
Completely wrong. Indiana is favored by a touchdown, 7 points.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. I agree. This is, especially with Indiana's backup quarterback, as far as I know. I guess I haven't looked too far into Penix's return, if he's going to return at all this year. But, yeah, that line surprised me. I think it's possible Indiana wins by a touchdown because, again, they're at home, and I know talent-wise Indiana's perfectly on par with Rutgers. So at home winning by a touchdown, I know it's possible, but I am surprised they're favored by 7 because, again, this Indiana team is 2-7, and they haven't won a game in the Big Ten yet. So
I think a lot of
I'm
just saying I think a lot of that has to do with Rutgers getting embarrassed by Wisconsin.
You're probably right.
That.
And that's what Vegas sets these lines for is public perception. They want to take people's money, and if you see Rutgers get blown out one week and then they're on the road the next week, you're not going to back Rutgers and think they're ready to win. So
I'll lock this one if you want, youngster. I'll take Rutgers in 7 points. I'll do it too. I think Rutgers is going to win the game. I know Indiana has struggled, but again, it just goes to show, and I want to keep going back to this because it's like, oh my gosh, Wisconsin's not that good this year, and they just killed Rutgers 52-3. They're not as good as you know what? That Wisconsin defense is a top 5 national defense, not a top 5 Big Ten defense. That is one of the best in the country. Anybody's going to struggle. They got lucky offensively. I think Rutgers, though, is going in the right direction. Indiana's probably feeling a little bit deflated, the guys that played last year and had that marvelous run. I just think Rutgers goes to Indiana and wins the game, or at least keeps it close and can cover the 7. So I'll take Rutgers in the 7 points if you want to.
Yeah, I'm down. Let's lock it. And this is another, and maybe this is why we suck at our locks, is that the last couple of years anyway, we suck at our go big or go home locks of the week, is because we know that the value says that Rutgers shouldn't be 7-point underdogs. They should cover this game, and they have a very easy possibility of winning the game. Is it possible for Indiana to win by a touchdown and cover the spread? Yeah. And so maybe that's how we lose this bet. But luckily, our bets are Monopoly money for the entirety of recording this show. Our bets are done with Monopoly money as far as our locks of the week are concerned. And, that's been a good thing for us the last couple of years because we have struggled. But again, I think it's because we know it's Monopoly money, and we know we go based on what the line should be, and this line should not be Indiana -7. And maybe that's how we get in trouble.
We're not Vegas odds makers either, youngster.
No, we're not.
There's a reason we're not.
Right. But I don't know if that's why we get in trouble with our locks, is because it is Monopoly money, and we're just kind of locking based on value. But anyway, at 3:30, 3 games left here. 2 at 3:30, 1 at 4. Starting at 3:30, Iowa, number 20 Iowa at home against Minnesota. Troy.
Wow. This should actually be a pretty good game. I mean, yeah. Minnesota's doing a lot better than I thought. Can they go to Iowa and win, though? We've talked about how hard it is to play at Iowa. I think the odds makers are going to say Iowa by 6.5.
You are close. Iowa by 5. So again, more than a field goal, less than a touchdown. It's hard for me because, in my opinion, Iowa should win this game by a touchdown. They're better, and they're at home. There's no reason why they shouldn't win by a touchdown. That said, we know what Iowa's offense is, and they can score 17 points against Northwestern. So what are they going to do against Minnesota? Explode for 40? No, they shouldn't. Can they? It's possible. And it's possible Iowa, again, they should win this game by at least a touchdown. They're the better team, and they're at home. So they should. But the over-under is set at 37 for a reason. I mean, it's these two teams are going to struggle scoring the ball. So, yeah, it's possible Minnesota hangs in there and loses by 3 or 4 and calls it a day, and they cover the spread. Again, the value, in my opinion, says Iowa should win this game by a touchdown, and you should bet Iowa. But I can see how you get in trouble there because Iowa's offense is bad.
They're really bad.
Yes.
I don't want to lock it.
Okay.
I think Minnesota has exceeded expectations. I know they laid a dud last week, but maybe that's what they needed now, and now they can go to Iowa and keep it competitive and pull off an upset.
Right. Maybe.
I mean, we don't know. I mean, Minnesota's shown that, hey, nobody's talking about us this year. Watch what we can do. So it's one of those things where I think they might have an opportunity to do some damage, my friend.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, I see the value in Iowa, but it's probably where I would get in trouble. Also at 3:30 is number 4 Ohio State at home against number 19 Purdue. Troy.
Well, I guess Ohio State should probably be a little worried about what Purdue can do, but I don't. I think Ohio State can put up a 50-bagger on them. Purdue, I think it's going to be Ohio State by 16.5.
Fairly close. Ohio State by 21. So I get it. There's no way I would bet Ohio State to beat Purdue by 21 points. Can they, like you said, score 50 and hold Purdue to 28 and cover a spread? Yeah, they can. So I get it, but there's no way I would bet Ohio State here. I think the value, again, would go to Purdue being able to throw the ball and keep the game within 3 scores and cover the spread. But I can see how Ohio State wins the game by more than 3 touchdowns. So
yeah, I wouldn't lock it, though.
Yeah, I would not lock either way. But
I'm not ready to lock that. What else we got today, youngster?
One more game at 4:00 Eastern on Fox. Number 7 Michigan State at home against Maryland.
Michigan State by 14.5.
Close again. Michigan State by 13. So just under 2 scores as opposed to over. And again, Michigan State, I guess what's interesting is that Michigan State is coming off of a loss. Maybe you could say they're feeling down about themselves, but they are at home. They do want to prove something. But I will say that Michigan State struggles to score a lot of points. I think Maryland can throw the ball just like Purdue can, and we saw what Purdue did to Michigan State. So I think it's possible Maryland upsets and wins this game. But theoretically, you can see how Michigan State wins by 2 scores because they're at home. They are the better team. They have a better running game. They have a better defense. So it makes sense. I wouldn't lock either way. I'd pick Michigan State to win at home, but I can see a way in which Maryland actually pulls an upset.
I don't. Ohio State should just crush them. But I'm not going to lock it.
Yeah. Fair enough. So we have our one lock of Rutgers +7 on the road at Indiana. We will see how that plays out. Again, so far against the spread this year, our locks are 5 and 10. So be careful when listening to us if you're throwing real money out there. There you go, Troy. You've got your Northwestern +24.5 at Wisconsin to get to.
Yeah, and I'll watch Wisconsin will throw 50 on the board again.
Mm-hmm. That's the way it goes.
All right, youngster, we got a tire up here. Hope you enjoyed the show today, everybody, on the Interpeak Coffee Studio Line. For the youngster, I am the old man. We'll get back at you next week. Same place, same time. Have a good day, everyone.